Hello. I'm going to tell a little story about an experience I had while I was in the Air Force, but that it's a story that I didn't hear until considerably after. If I said that I was in the Air Force, that's not quite what I meant to say. I wasn't in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force. He was in the Air Force all the way from the time that he might have only been about 22 until he was, let's see, I think 55. 55 when he left the service. But when I say that I was in the Air Force, what I mean is that I was a dependent of someone in the Air Force, and that I had a lot of experience living on Air Force bases, and I knew a lot about the Air Force. In fact, that's one reason that I decided not to go into the Air Force myself, because I knew a considerable amount about what life was like in the Air Force. One of the most compelling reasons for me not to go into the Air Force was what I witnessed myself, and that was when my father was forced to retire when he was 55 years old, and he still had 4 or 5 kids in his house, living in his house. That's kind of rough. What do you do when you're 55 and you've got young children to support yet, and you can't work anymore for the enterprise that you worked for your whole life. What do you do? But I digress naturally, because I was going to tell a story about an event that happened that I think several people, including my mom, told me the story. When the strategic missile program rolled out, I think it was sometime in the, would it be 60s, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Air Force was discussing and actually implementing a strategy which would either significantly supplement or even replace entirely strategic bombing conducted by pilots piloting long range, high altitude bombers. Right? So, the first successful Air Force program in ICBMs was the Titan program. And when the Titan program began to develop, my father became convinced that strategic long-range missiles was going to be the operational way to deliver ordnance to remote locations. That was going to be the method of choice for the Air Force. So, my dad was a long-range bomber, navigator. He was credentialed, proficient, I think, 2 B-52s. Certainly B-47s, because he was in the Strategic Air Command. What they called at the time was SAC. So my dad got into missiles at a very, He was in his prime in his career, and in the program itself from the very beginning. I remember him going to school in Little Rock, Arkansas for it. He went away to school like for 90 days, quite a few times. Um, so I guess I had to preface the story I wanted to tell with all of this background information. And I hope it's interesting too. So we were living in Wichita, Kansas, or I should say properly, outside of Wichita, Kansas, at an Air Force base called McConnell. McConnell Air Force Base is might be 40 miles, might be 60 miles outside of Wichita, but I don't think it's much more than 60 miles outside of Wichita. McConnell Air Force Base. At that time, it was surrounded by airplane production. There was two private, how should I say, individual, public, I'm not quite sure how, general aviation is what they call it in the aviation industry, general aviation manufacturers. And they were the two of the very biggest names in general aviation aircraft. They were Beech and Cessna. Both of them had plants out there, and it seemed like they were contiguous with the Air Force Base, as was Boeing. Boeing had an enormous plant right outside of McConnell Air Force Base. Every day on the school buses, which bused us to factory towns to go to school, we passed through the Boeing plant, and it was incredible. Warehouse after warehouse after warehouse, like it would never end, to get just through that part of the trip till we got to Oakland, Kansas. I digress again. So my father was in the Titan missile program at McConnell, and he was the squadron commander. I think it was a squadron, and their mission was to maintain the Titans, because there was Titans, out there in the Kansas cornfields or wheat fields, or whatever it was. There was Titan missile silos. So McConnell Air Force Base maintained them. Maybe others, as well. So you know what that involved. It just occurred to me. Nukes. I didn't realize that until actually just this moment. Can you imagine that? So I assumed that at some point you had to disarm a Titan missile, and what do? You got to take the nuclear warhead somewhere, and do you take it to the Air Force Base? I don't know. Maybe it's possible. So he was the commander of missile maintenance at McConnell Air Force Base. Now, I'm telling all of this with the sincere and honest belief that none of this is classified, that I wouldn't get into trouble. Like, he revealed state secrets. How do you find him? Guilty or not guilty? Something. I don't think anything like that's going to happen. So, to continue with the story, I don't know if any of you know, maybe some of you know, that the Titan program was of a particular nature in that Titan missiles are liquid fueled rockets. So they burn nitrogen. Nitrogen, most of what's in those stacks, in that long tube is highly compressed nitrogen gas. It's compressed to the point where it's liquefied. So you get an enormous amount of energy out of liquefied nitrogen. Enormous amount. And there are thousands and thousands of gallons of liquefied nitrogen in each one of those Titan missiles. They're huge. I actually got a chance to stand in a silo once with a live Titan II missile outside of Denver. So, being as that the squadron was in missile maintenance, and Titan II's fuel is liquid nitrogen, it's not surprising that they had to handle the fuel sometimes. I don't know if maybe they even had, maybe they had huge tanks full of liquid nitrogen. It would be reasonable. I don't know how, it would probably leak off slowly. I don't, maybe you'd have to replace it occasionally. Pardon me, please. So, there was an accident in the maintenance shop. I don't know how it happened exactly. I don't know even what quantity it involved, but I'm pretty sure that fuel was spilled. I don't know if many of you saw that one James Bond movie where they were in like Puerto Rico somewhere, the villain's lair, and there was these gigantic tanks of liquid nitrogen and underground command post, I guess. I don't. But if you'll remember, one of those tanks broke and got sloshed the liquid nitrogen everywhere, and everything froze, became just totally brittle. And I think that's, I imagine that could have happened. So I don't know if it was 1,000 gallons, 100 gallons, but some significant quantity of liquid nitrogen got spilled. So there was an investigation, and the entire squadron was fired. Every officer in it, maybe even the wing commander, got fired for this accident. My dad didn't have a job. There he was in McConnell. He was getting his paycheck it's like everybody else. He was a colonel. No job. So after a while, my dad started to get a little sloppy. And no, I'm not going to offend. I hope I don't offend any of my brothers and sisters by this, but it's a matter of speech. So he was playing golf every day and stuff, And after about 6 months of that, my mom got sick and tired, having him home every day, just doing what he was doing. And I don't think my dad minded at all. I'm fucking go to work if you can get your paycheck and play golf every day. So she finally had enough. She called the wing commander up and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And he said, "Of course, come on in." They made an appointment. She went in to see him. Some of you here might know my mom. Um, I'm sure somebody who watches this will know my mom, and so when I tell them what happened, it's gonna make perfect sense. So um, she goes in and talks to the wing commander, and he tells her he doesn't know when he's going to get a job, when he'll get an assignment. He doesn't know. So she said, I'll tell you what. It's Monday. By Friday, my dad, I'm sorry, it would be Vince, will have a phone call from your office or somebody else's office, and the phone call will be his next assignment. And I don't know if this might have been, who it was she was talking about, but we could probably look that up if we wanted to. I mean, who she was talking to, this wing commander. And he said, well, how do you think that's going to happen? And she said, if that phone call is not received on Friday, the following Monday, a phone call will be made to Walter Cronkite. And Walter Cronkite is going to get the story about the liquid nitrogen spill and the fact there are 15 officers on this base playing golf every day because they don't have a job. And so she said, thank you very much, and I really appreciate your time. Suffice to say that the phone call was received on Friday, and it was, I would say, a plum assignment. Plum. Barksdale Air Force Base. My dad was the 46th Communications Squadron Commander at Barksdale Air Force Base, and that's another story, but I'll save that one for next time because I told you the story that I wanted to tell you tonight.